I take everywhere I go. I see your face, unforgettable. Every heart you break, you'll never know. I see your face, unforgettable. Unforgettable.
'Achter elk scherm zit een wereld verstopt. Een algoritme dat wonderlijk klopt. Elke dag weer die toverkracht. Is er iemand die het ziet? Ze niet dat zelfontplooiing tot de kern behoort. Zien ze niet dat je agile moet werken voor een korte time te maken en daarmee storypunten scoort. Al die data, klein en groot. Je hebt zelfs apps voor zo broodjes. Soft skills, software, snel releasebaar. De koffiekopjes zijn soms vies, maar de code die is clean.
Dirk.
Kan je het?
Dirk. We moeten wel nog iets hebben van een soort van eindtekstje of zo.
We zien het wel.
Every step I take, everywhere I go, I see your face, unforgettable. Every heart you break, you will never know. I see your face, unforgettable.
Wat experts gemeen hebben is dat ze allemaal uniek zijn.
Club, super gave, gedreven mensen.
Die leuke dingen aan het doen zijn.
Jou kijken, ja, moet ik daar kijken. Daar kijken.
Mijn levensmotto. Succes is een keuze, roep ik af en toe.
Act now, apologize later.
Die heb ik niet voor je.
Dat vind ik een beetje een rukvraag. Ja, die skippen. Expert helpt klanten om intelligent oplossingen te bouwen. Daarvoor doen we vaak een cloud transformatie, cultuurverandering aanbrengen, dev en ops laten samenwerken, feedback loops realiseren, hyperscale, moderne webarchitecturen.
Spirit voor mij is eigenlijk een familie.
Het is meer een way of living dan eigenlijk een job. Eigenlijk.
Autonomie, je bepaalt zelf je eigen koers en het gebrek aan officiële structuren.
De mensen en de kennis die je kan opbouwen.
Als je iets kunt bedenken wat cool is, dan moet je dat gaan doen. Dus the sky is the limit. Goeie koffie.
fixed. Yeah, your love is an abyss for my heart to eclipse now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Might have had your fill, but I feel it still.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first edition of Techorama in the Netherlands. It has been an amazing adventure so far, with lots of support from the Dutch community and our partners to pull this off. We want you to have the best possible experience for the next 2 days, and we have the pleasure to kick off the conference with a keynote by Scott Guthrie, Executive Vice President of the Cloud and Enterprise Group at Microsoft. The man in the red shirt will show how Azure and the intelligent cloud can help you solve your most complex business and developer problems. Let's give Scott Guthrie a warm welcome here at Techorama.
Well, it is great to be back here in the Netherlands, and it's great to be back here at Techorama. And I really appreciate everyone coming out here for the event. It looks like a fantastic conference, and I'm really honored to lead it off with the first talk and provide a chance to kind of talk about some of the work we're doing with Azure, and hopefully show off a bunch of demos so that even if you are an experienced Azure hand, hopefully you will see a couple new demos that you haven't seen before, and hopefully a fun conference ahead. You know, one of the things I've talked about a lot the last couple of years, and I think this is sort of true more so now than ever, is it's an amazing time to be a developer. When you think about all of the different technologies that are out there for us to take advantage of, you know, whether it's new technology like containers and serverless functions, whether it's around ways to work with data and store massive amounts of big data and apply AI onto it, or whether it's new kind of approaches like DevOps in terms of how we even structure our teams and work on projects. You know, it's just never been sort of a more exciting time in terms of the amount of technology that we get to play with and the amount of cool technology that we get to use. You know, at the same time though, I think one of the things that a slide like this speaks to is both the opportunity and also the challenge, which is how do you use all this stuff? And I think one of the things I also hear a lot as I talk to developers is, I'm trying to become an expert on all this stuff, and it can sometimes be a little overwhelming. How do I stay up to date on all the technology? How do I use it to build transformational new solutions for the company I work for? And how do I do it in a way that I can stay secure? And all those things can be challenging and are not easy. And one of the things that we're trying to do with Azure and the cloud platform that we provide is try to provide a cloud platform that allows you to take advantage of all this bleeding technology and really use it to build amazing solutions, and do it in a way that enables you to be productive so that you can actually get things done fast. Do it in a way that allows you to integrate with the existing solutions that you might already have inside your organizations in a hybrid way. Do it in a way that is going to allow you to add AI and intelligence into the applications that you build. And then do it in a way that's going to be trusted and allows you to really run your business on it, both from a quality and from a security perspective, and enable you to kind of be successful. And hopefully you'll see throughout the demos that we do today and a lot of the talks throughout the event, ways that each of these 4 pillars, productive, hybrid, intelligent, and trusted, are reflected throughout all the different services and features that you see. In terms of a little bit about Azure, in terms of on a couple of those points, One of the things that's great about Azure is that you can use it all over the world. And from a compliance perspective, we now have more certifications and compliance than any other cloud provider out there. So you can use it for banking, you can use it for healthcare, you can use it in whatever geography that you want to reach, and know that the applications and the solutions you build are compliant for that market. And we now have Azure built out around the world in 54 regions, where you can deploy and run the applications and the code that you build, including one right here in the Netherlands that we call our West Europe region, along with, I don't remember how many, but probably another 14 other regions around Europe. And you can see whether it's in North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Australia, China, Southeast Asia, and more. We have other regions that you can deploy into. And we now have about 95% of the largest 500 companies in the world now building and running their solutions on Azure. And so as you build your solutions and as you look to build applications with it, know that you're in good company. Pretty much everyone around the world now is taking advantage of and using Azure. So enough kind of intro. Let's actually talk about some of the new services that we're releasing and show off a bunch of cool demos that hopefully highlight some of the things that even if you're experienced with Azure, you can now take advantage of. And if you're brand new to Azure, hopefully gives you an introduction in terms of what you can do with it. Quick show of hands, how many people here are using Azure today? Ooh, good. Great. How many people here are using another cloud platform today? Cool. That's great. Okay. We've won. Just a good, friendly audience. Great. Well, again, hopefully, even if you are used to Azure, there's some new stuff that you're going to see. And then also, if you're brand new to Azure, there's a bunch of new things that you'll be able to take advantage of. So one of the things that we're focused on, obviously, with Azure since the beginning has really been around how can you build great apps. And one of the things that makes Azure, I think, is pretty special is the number of services that we now have that enable you to build great applications and not have to worry about the infrastructure and a lot of the underlying mechanics of which they run. We've got, for example, our Azure App Service, which is ideal for building web applications and mobile backends. It now has support for both Windows as well as Linux. And so you can basically stand up an app service instance, deploy your code into it, auto-scale it, scale up, scale down, do your SSL management, set up continuous delivery, kind of all within minutes with whatever operating system or whatever language you want to take advantage of. We've got our serverless function capability with Azure Functions now that enables you to deploy snippets of code or entire libraries where you don't even have to have any underlying infrastructure that's stood up. You can instead execute it serverlessly so that you don't have to pay for any underlying resources, and you can scale to thousands of events per second or millions of events per second if you want to. We have our new Logic App Service, which I'm going to be showing in the tips and tricks talk, that enables you to orchestrate workflows across applications that can be talking across many, many different services, and enable you to set up declarative workflows that you can manage and monitor, again, all serverlessly. And we have our new Azure Kubernetes service, as well as an update to our Service Fabric offering. And both of these give you a way that you can containerize applications, run them serverlessly if you want. Both now support a serverless option, and containerize and enable a microservice-based architecture in a really nice way. And in fact, for pretty much all of these services out there, we now support both serverless as well as container-based approaches. So you can take standard Docker-based tools, whether it's a web app, whether it's a function, whether it's a Kubernetes-based or a Service Fabric-based application. You can containerize it using standard Docker-based tooling and upload it into the cloud. And what I thought I'd do is actually have Lawrence here show a demo of how you can take standard app, in this case here a .NET app, but it could be written in other languages as well, and using some of the new Visual Studio Docker tools, containerize it, run it locally on a laptop, and then show how easy it is to deploy, in this case here, to an Azure App Service. And then we're going to add in serverless functionality in an event-driven way so that we can process events and be able to push it into that containerized instance as well. And hopefully we're going to do all this in about 7.5 minutes live with coding. So
That's
We'll
the
switch
promise.
over and do the demo.
All right, so let's see if I can switch to my laptop. Here we go. All right. So thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. My name is Laurent. I'm working on the Cloud Developer Advocates team at Microsoft. And I don't know if you know that, but I also moonlight as an inventory manager at Contoso Cafe. And so Contoso does everything these days, even cafes. And here we have one of our dashboards where we can see inventory. So we can see every location, how much bread they have, how much milk, etc. And of course, this is all updated. We get thousands of events every day from our different stores. But because processing those events is very expensive on-premise, we do a batch job about once a week, and then we update the website. And so, of course, for me, it's very difficult because I don't have a real-time application. I don't see those numbers change in real time. Now, the other thing we'd like to do is to take this application. It's an ASP.NET Core application. We would like to package it and deploy it to the cloud because we hear that this cloud thing is not just a fad, right? So it's going well. So what I'm going to show you here is Visual Studio. And we hear that containers are really great. Containers are allowing you to basically have everything in a known environment. Then you can copy those containers to a registry, to Azure, to a local VM if you prefer. Test everything, make sure that everything's working. And we have first-class support for that in Visual Studio. So here, this is the ASP.NET Core application. I'm going to go and select Add, Docker support. And here I can select Windows or Linux as an operating system directly. So I'm going to select Linux because a lot of the web is running on Linux, so we have also support for that in Azure. And now from this moment on, you notice that I have here Docker as a target for my runtime. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to actually start running that. And I'll show you that in my event controller, I have here a breakpoint. So the really nice thing is that I'm deploying this to Docker on my Windows machine. The Docker container is actually running Linux. But I'm going to be able to debug that into my Windows machine, into my Visual Studio experience with the debug experience that we know and love. So here, the application is starting up. Notice that it is running in localhost. And if I click on the event viewer, basically I'm navigating to a page. In just a few seconds, it's going to break in Visual Studio, and I can go and do the debug. So I have a really, really nice debug experience here. All right, so now my application is in Docker. I can publish it. So in a real-life scenario, Donovan would tell you need a continuous integration pipeline. I'm going to do a right-click publish. It's like a sin. I know. Just to show you all the targets that we have, right? And so we have app service on Linux, on Azure. We have container registry, so we also support Kubernetes. Azure Virtual Machine if you want, IIS. You can even deploy to a folder if you want to package this container. I'm going to cancel because I hear that we shouldn't do that, right? All right, cool. So now I have my Docker story running, everything's good. Now I would like to modernize this application. Let's add some life to this application. So I told you we get thousands of events, and those events are actually going already in an event hub running on Azure. So that's already a good step. But now we'd like to really process those events in real time. Now when we hear thousands of events, we need something which is scaling very fast, right? We don't want to pay when we don't have events, but also when those events are coming up, we need to be able to scale very fast. And that's a great solution for serverless Azure functions. So I'm going to add here a new project, and I'm going to select here Cloud Azure Functions. And we're going to select here function version 2, so it's a .NET standard version, it's our newest version, Event Hub. And I'm going to enter a connection string, which we are going to define in just a second. And the name of the hub is inventory. All right. So now it's going to create the function for me. I'm using C# here, but you could use JavaScript, Java, any other language you prefer. And now another thing I need to do, I want to communicate with my website in real time. So we are going to use WebSockets to do that. It's a really very, very exciting technology. And in .NET, we have SignalR to do that. And what you can do now, you don't need to run SignalR on your machine. You can also deploy that to Azure because we have a brand new SignalR service to do that. So I'm going to add SignalR support to my .NET application here. I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages. Here, let's select SignalR service. It's still a preview at the moment, but it's going to be released very soon. All right, just need to accept the license. Here we go. And now what's going to happen is that I have SignalR. So from my function, every time that an event is coming in, it's going to send a message to SignalR, and SignalR is going to dispatch that to all the web clients that we have anywhere in the world. So I'm going to add here support to my function. Now what we do here is a binding, and this is what we call an output binding. So basically this is a target of the processing of my function. The message I'm going to send has a target, it's web, it's just the name of the Signal hub, and I'm going to send the event hub message directly. In my website, I have some JavaScript which is going to process that when we get something. The last thing I need to do is add the connection string, because I'm going to run this locally here. So I have two connection strings. I have the event hub where the events are coming from, and I have the signal R, which is the output for my function. All right, now at this point I can run this function. I'm actually going to run it locally on my machine so that I can debug. That's a great feature that we have in Visual Studio. But of course, in production, I will deploy that to Azure, and this is going to auto-scale and handle all the events that we have. So now is the tricky part. I'm going to just wait. It's not tricky, I just need to wait, but it's very bad for my heart. We'll see some events starting to flow in. And those events are basically all the events that I mentioned coming from our different stores. Just taking a few seconds to spin up. Here we go, and now we can see that our inventory is alive with data. So it makes my life a lot easier because I can see the events in real time. So if I summarize the demo, we took an existing ASP.NET application, Dockerized it for easy deployment, then we added some real-life interaction from an event hub through Signal R directly to our website. Hope you like this demo. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks so much. So a lot in 7 minutes. And the cool thing is, all the services that he showed are available in general availability, whether it's Azure App Service, both the Linux as well as the Windows edition, as well as the Docker edition, whether it's Azure Functions, that enables you that serverless model, whether it's the Docker tooling, and now the Signal R service that's available inside Azure as well. You can spin all that up, and you can literally process millions of events per second, or just a few events per second, and you pay only for what you use completely in a serverless way. So a lot more services that we'll talk about throughout the event. I'm going to show even more demos in my tips and tricks talk, which comes right after this one. But I just want to give you a flavor in terms of some of these cool services that you can now take advantage of to build some pretty amazing apps. Now, the other thing that we've been focusing on is not just building sort of services that you can use as a developer, but also kind of rethinking how do you do development. And in particular, enabling you to embrace what we call a DevOps-based model, which is sort of agile to the extreme, where you're doing both agile-based execution planning and team development, but also moving into a model where you can continuously update your services as a developer. And also as a developer, how do you basically monitor your diagnostics and be able to kind of quickly respond and continually push out changes and add new value as you do it. And I think one of the things you'll find is if you embrace a DevOps model is it both requires new muscles that you need to learn how to use, but it also makes development even more fun because you can immediately see the results of what you're delivering, and you can deliver those results much, much faster. We're doing a couple of things at Microsoft as part of that. One of the big announcements that we made earlier this summer is announce our intent to acquire GitHub, which is the largest developer online site and community in the world. There's over 29 million developers active on it today, and literally tens of millions of code repositories. And we've been partnering deeply with GitHub for many years now. In fact, we moved all of our open source projects to GitHub several years ago, and so things like .NET, things like VS Code, all of our Azure SDKs, ASP.NET, and more have really been hosted, and we've really not just hosted them on GitHub, but really embraced the model of develop in the open and in a very open source based way, and we've just seen tremendous value from it. And part of our goal with GitHub is going to be to make sure that we really respect the GitHub community and take great care to make sure that we don't disrupt anything in it. And we're going to continue to operate GitHub as an independent company from Microsoft and make sure that we really take care of that responsibility that we know comes with having them be part of the broader family. Now, the other thing that we're doing then is not just on the GitHub side, but also is something that we just released last month that we call Azure DevOps, which is a set of services that you can use independently or also together with GitHub to enable better DevOps-based workflows. And you can use it actually with any cloud. It isn't tied to Azure, despite the fact that it has the Azure name. But it does work particularly well with Azure, And you'll see a demo just shortly in terms of some of the things that you can do with it. And what's nice about the Azure DevOps set of offerings is they're basically discrete, independent services that you can take advantage of. And so some people might use all of them, some people might just use one of them. And they really enable you to kind of embrace a DevOps-based model in a really agile way. And so, for example, if you have a GitHub repository and you want to wire up continuous integration and continuous delivery, you could take advantage, for example, of our Azure Pipeline service, which enables you to set up a build pipeline that'll execute every time a pull request is made into GitHub. And you can set up, for example, test plans if you want to be able to run automated unit tests against those and do full release management and push the results into a dev test or even a production instance if they pass, all in a completely automated way. We have other services as part of this family that let you do things like Kanban boards and agile project planning. We've got other services that enable you to do dev labs, so you can set up dev test build environments and or development environments in a really agile way and manage the costs and the life cycle of when to shut those down and how to manage them across your team. And then we also support our Azure repos, which gives you a source control option if you don't want to use GitHub that's built on our VSTS offering and gives you the same Git as well as TFS-based source control with all these capabilities as well. And what I'd like to do is invite Donovan on stage to show off kind of a demo of all these services or several of these services that you can also integrate again with GitHub to enable a really nice end-to-end DevOps-based workflow. So here's Donovan.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Perfect. We don't right-click publish. We're going to rub a little DevOps on it. We're going to make it better. Because our mission at Microsoft is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. To do that, I believe that we have to empower you to use open source with the same Microsoft tools that you use today in your enterprise. I believe that the investments that we're making in GitHub and with Azure DevOps are doing just that. So let me show you what I mean. So if we can get HDMI 1 up there, maybe it's because my machine is asleep. Is my machine asleep? I did. There it goes. It's as jet lagged as I am, so sorry. My machine went straight to sleep. So what we have here is a typical GitHub repository. And GitHub is great for versioning my code. It's also really good for tracking my issues. They were clever enough to add something called a marketplace. What this marketplace is going to allow us to do is to be able to add value to our repository that wasn't there from the beginning. For example, continuous integration and continuous delivery. Continuous integration is the practice upon every commit to my repository. I want the code to be downloaded, compiled, tested, and packaged. And then continuous delivery is going to allow me to take that code and actually deploy it to my infrastructure. Inside the GitHub Marketplace is where you're going to find Azure Pipelines, which is the CI/CD offering of Azure DevOps. When you add this to your repository, you're going to get 10 concurrent pipelines, unlimited build minutes on macOS, Windows, and Linux, and you're going to get all of it for free. Everyone clap now. I don't know how I have to tell you to clap for free. I mean, what else can we do besides give it away for free? So all you have to do is add it to your account. We're going to give you all this cool stuff. And then inside of Azure DevOps, you will have access to all of your GitHub organizations. For example, I can choose this GitHub organization I created for this particular demo. From here, I can now see the repositories I have inside that particular organization. What should happen now is when I click on that, Azure Pipelines is literally reading my repository and determines that, oh, this is a Node.js application. Oh, and I found there's a Docker file in there, so you should probably use our Docker template to build your application. So if I go ahead and confirm this, it's going to bring up an editor for me. And what this editor is going to have in it is a YAML file. YAML is a textual representation of all the steps that I need to actually build my application. And when my internet catches up, you're going to actually be able to see that here. Maybe. So this is why we have heart problems when we do demos. But I'm going to go ahead and reload this and see if I can get my internet to catch up. We're going to have a YAML file. Like I said, a YAML file is just a textual representation of all the steps necessary to build my actual application. And when we do this, what's really cool about our YAML file is that it does work on Mac, it works on Windows, and it works on Linux. Historically, you would have to write one YAML file for Mac, one YAML file for Linux, and another YAML file for the other operating system. Don't worry about this because I actually have one that already works. It's OK. Thank you. So this is what happens when it works. What ends up happening is that you can actually have the code worked inside of your checks API. The checks API is how you're able to see the results of a build built somewhere else on the GitHub repo right inside of GitHub. This is really, really powerful because I don't have to, as a committer to your repository, get into your tool set, figure out how to read the builds. Right here, I can see that my build was actually successful and that everything was OK. If I needed to jump inside of the build, I actually can. I can simply click on details, and it's going to take me to a view that looks just like this. It shows me every single step that has succeeded or failed. I can drill in and see all the details of that particular item and make any corrections necessary as an end user. What's really nice as well is that when I'm done with the build, it's now time to take what was built for me and release it out into production. We have a release management system that allows you to do just that. And just like we had before, we have all these cool templates. We built a Docker file, so what we want to do is deploy this out into Kubernetes. We have the ability to do it with Helm charts. We also have the ability to do it with just kubectl if you're a low-level person that wants to do that as well. So if I come up here and choose the task that I want, let me see if I can find the one I'm looking for, Helm. What it does automatically is on my stage, it adds all the tasks necessary to perform that particular action. So it'll initialize my cluster for me. It'll go back in and upgrade my application. And just that easily, I'm able to take the image that I built with my CI system and deploy it out into my Kubernetes cluster. But it gets even better. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of tasks that allow you to work with any language targeting any platform. Every single one of these is actually written in the open inside of GitHub. The way that I learned how to write my own was I went and I cloned the repository from GitHub, found a task very similar to the one that I wanted, and just changed it and then uploaded it again. You can do the exact same thing. If you don't see the task that you need, feel free to write your own. Before I write my own, I would go to the marketplace. The marketplace is where there are literally hundreds of our peers, our partners, and our competitors even writing extensions that allow you to do amazing things with Azure DevOps. But if you know PowerShell or you know Node.js, you already know how to write these things. And you can extend this platform to do whatever it is that you need it to do. Now, if you notice in the left-hand nav here, you only see the word pipelines. But on the slide that Scott just showed you, there was a lot more than just pipelines. There were boards and test cases and artifacts. What we've done is we've streamlined your interface. We knew you were coming from GitHub, so you already have a repository, so you don't need us to show you repository here. You're probably using issues to track your work, so you don't need work item tracking. And instead of confusing you with navigation you don't need, we streamlined it just to the parts that you need. So let me show you a project that's completely configured. Now you can see my left-hand nav has a lot more value in it. It has boards, it has repos, pipelines, test plans, artifacts. Artifacts are where I can store my NuGet packages, my Maven packages, and whatever I need to build my actual application in a private way. What you're looking at here is an example of a board. This is a Kanban board. And this is the same type of Kanban board we use on the Azure DevOps team to actually build Azure DevOps, which is really nice. So we dog food everything that we do here inside of Microsoft. So when you think about Azure DevOps, don't think of it as just a collection of services. You need to think of it as a platform that you can extend to make sure you can rub DevOps on anything that you want. So please, go use it and be great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Perfect. And so as you saw from Donovan there, in terms of that ability to very easily take any project written in any language and wire it up for a DevOps-based workflow has never been easier. And we're really super excited to see kind of what you do with all these different tools and some of the great solutions that you can now enable with them. So we talked about building apps and talking about sort of the application side and writing code side of that application development. Let's switch gears now and talk a little bit about data and AI and the work you might then do on the back-end side to be able to make those apps even smarter. And one of the things that we've been focused on a lot at Microsoft and with Azure has been providing a set of what we call operational data services that you can leverage and use. And these are basically platform services where we provide an SLA with them. You don't need to run these in VMs. Instead, they're delivered as a service with an SLA. And they're designed so that you can take advantage of whatever popular database you want to use. So how many people here use SQL Server? Great. How many people here use Postgres? Great. How many people here use MySQL? Great. How many people here use Redis? Great. How many people here are using Cosmos DB? One of our new servers. Great. How many people use Cassandra? MongoDB? Great. The good news is we have database services for all those. How many people here use Oracle? Yeah, sorry. But anyway, no, it's a great database as well. But you know, the cool thing in terms of you know, those other ones I mentioned is, you know, we do provide them as a service. They're easy to stand up. They're very cost efficient, and they take care of high availability. They take care of patching. They take care of kind of all that administration for you, so you can really focus on, you know, building your application and delivering value. The other thing all of these have, I should mention, is they now have VNet support. So we also now provide a way that you can encapsulate these in your own private virtual network inside Azure. So you can also ensure that only your applications can ever access them or talk to them and lock them down even further from a network perspective. Now, one of these services I mentioned is something we call Cosmos DB, which is probably our fastest growing service in Azure today, and is one that we introduced only about a year ago, but we've just seen amazing uptake in terms of the applications built with it. And it's really the world's first what we call globally distributed database. And by that we mean you can actually run Cosmos DB all over the world simultaneously. So you could run it here in the Netherlands. You could also have an instance running, say, in the western half of the US. You could have an instance running in Australia, one in China, as well as one in South America. And any change that you make to the database will automatically percolate in all of the other regions. And you can run them completely in an active way, which really changes the way that you can scale at a global level and do really, really interesting applications. What's cool about Cosmos DB is it can really let you scale to any size. So, you know, say you say, well, that's great, I can conquer the world, but I'm working on something small right now. Well, you can start with a database that is just a few gigabytes in size and maybe only does, say, 100 operations per second. But you can also then scale it up to a system that is maybe petabytes in size. And some of our largest Cosmos DB customers are now doing over 10 million operations per second against it, which is sort of just massive, massive scale. And what's cool about all these operations and scale is we guarantee single-digit millisecond response time for both reads and writes, which is something else that no other data platform does. And what's really nice about Cosmos DB is it also allows you to use whatever API you want against it. So if you like SQL, we have a SQL-like API that you can use as your query language. We also have a MongoDB API. And then last week, we just released our Cassandra-based API. And that allows you to take your existing libraries, your existing code that might be written for Cassandra or Mongo and just use it against Cosmos DB and take advantage of all those benefits. We also have a Gremlin graph-based API if you're working in terms of a graph-based world, as well as a Spark API that's particularly useful for analytics. And the other thing that we now support, and we just released again in general availability last week, is something we call multi-master support. And this gives you the ability not just to have Cosmos DB running all over the world and for the data to be available all over the world, but it also ensures that if you write data in any part of the world, it'll automatically percolate to all the other regions, and you can actually write things now multiple places simultaneously. And Cosmos DB can handle automatically merging the data. It has a built-in mechanism to ensure that there's very little conflicts. And it does provide a mechanism so that there is conflicts. You can either do a policy-based approach or write custom logic to determine how conflicting writes are rationalized. And this gives you, again, a sort of unbelievable power to build applications that literally can run anywhere. And so what I thought I'd do is actually show off a demo of Cosmos DB in action and how you can take advantage of it within your applications. And just to show off that this stuff works not just with Windows and .NET, let's actually switch to my Mac, which is not that, but is this. We'll show off a demo of a simple Node application in action. So what I'm going to do here is, this is an application. How many people here like Marvel Comics? Great. Turns out a developer event, Marvel Comics, is more popular, I've discovered, than a financial analyst event. Not as many hands there, but cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run a simple app. It's built with Node. And just open up here, browser. And it's a Wikipedia-like app specifically around the Marvel Universe. And so it's got pages for each of the Marvel characters. So here's Tony Stark, and I can read a bunch of text about him that we pulled off Wikipedia. And then we also built this little simple chat bot on the right-hand side. And basically the idea with the chat bot is I can go ahead and ask a question. So if I want to ask, who are your friends? I could ask that. It hits the database, comes back, and lists Tony Stark's friends. If I want to maybe ask a question of like, who are your enemies that work for Hydra? I can do that as well. And it brings those back as well. And you know, some of these questions that I could ask in this chatbot are not the type of questions that I could easily express in a purely relational query-based way, because a lot of these things are looking at relationships across many, many people in the Marvel comic universe. And you know, in a traditional relational table-based approach where I just have foreign keys and primary keys, these queries are going to become very complex. And instead, a better approach that I might want to leverage is a graph-based database, because then I can actually traverse arcs and nodes across the universe and express queries and write queries in a simpler, more logical way. And this is sort of how a lot of social networks work, as an example. And the cool thing is I can do this with Cosmos DB, because one of the APIs that it supports, in addition to Cassandra and Mongo, is a Gremlin graph-based API that is particularly well suited for handling graph-based data structures. And so if I want to create a Cosmos DB database, it's pretty easy to do that. I just click the new button here, and there's a little Cosmos DB option that shows up. And when I do that, it gives me kind of this blade experience. I can choose, for example, where my default region I want to run is around the world. I can also then go ahead and choose by default what is the default API that I want to basically take advantage of with this database. And so you can again see I have SQL, I have Mongo, I have Cassandra, and I have that Gremlin graph option at the bottom. So super easy way, 2 clicks, I can go ahead and stand up a simple database. Let's go ahead and look at one that I've loaded a little bit earlier, which is what's powering this application. And this is going to bring up the management experience. And you'll see here in this management experience, we have a couple different things. The first is we have a list of collections or graphs specific to this Marvel application. It looks like I did one test foo app as well. But you can see here I have a heroes database that I'm using to represent that Marvel universe. When I click on this, it's going to bring up kind of a data explorer view. And I'm going to execute here a simple query, which is g.v, which is the Gremlin syntax that will actually go back and bring back, let's minimize this so you can see, query of all the different nodes in the Gremlin universe. And you can kind of see here now, I'm actually bringing back a whole bunch of different characters. I can actually click on individuals, and if I want to even expand that so I can see who they're related to. And it's a very graph-based approach for how I can look at kind of, again, this data structure and do queries interactive, you know, and test it out all here inside the tool. Now what's cool is I can do this obviously not just in the admin tool, but I can also do it programmatically. And this is the Node.js app that this app is built in. And I'm using TypeScript here inside VS Code. And you can see I'm connecting to this by just importing the standard Gremlin NPM package from Node. And if you look here, I'm just doing that same Gremlin syntax that you saw me do in the admin tool when I basically look up a particular hero. And I'm able to query and work with the data, you know, in my language of choice in a way that looks like a standard Gremlin-based database. So again, easy way I can use existing libraries, existing tools, and represent this data all inside Cosmos DB. Now what's nice about the data is I can also, about Cosmos DB though, is it's not just a simple data source that's running inside a VM. It really is a managed service that can run all over the world. And so if I click here on the replicate data globally option on the left-hand side, you can actually see all of the different regions around the world where this Cosmos DB Marvel database is currently deployed. And so I've got one here in Europe, I've got 2 in the US, 1 in South America, 1 in India, 1 in Singapore, and 2 in Australia. And if I want to deploy this in other locations, so let's say, for example, I want to deploy this in Japan, I can just go ahead, click the region I want to do it, and hit save, and that'll then basically deploy that database there as well. And all these databases are running active-active, so I can query and write changes to any of these databases simultaneously, and the changes will be percolated all over the world, all within single-digit millisecond latency. The other thing we allow you to do as we percolate data is to control the consistency model. And so this is another really powerful feature that we have built into Cosmos DB. Most databases have one consistency model that you have to work with. So some databases, like a relational database like SQL, guarantees what we call strong level consistency. So when you make a write, it guarantees that every other read immediately afterwards will see that write change take effect. And that's super powerful for a lot of scenarios where, let's say you're doing financial transactions or you just want to guarantee that the data is always consistent. Other databases support what's called eventual consistency. And they're more designed for distributed scenarios where I write the change and it guarantees the change is committed in that location. But 1,000 miles away, it might take a few seconds for the database change to occur and show up there. The reason you might want that is it basically gives you very, very fast data writes in a particular location. And if consistency is not quite as important for certain scenarios, that lag that happens as you replicate is totally fine, and you're basically getting better performance as a result. But it's often a decision you end up having to make at the very beginning of your project, and it's hard to reverse, or you have to change your database if you later want to change it. What's cool about Cosmos DB is it gives you the ability to use any different consistency model inside your application. So I could do strong consistency with atomic guarantees. I could do session level consistency, or eventual consistency, meaning my data eventually will replicate around the world. And I can also do what's called session level consistency, which is a nice compromise in between, which means that as soon as I write my data, that client, the next time it does a read, is guaranteed to always get the last written data that I wrote, so it's always consistent. But another session might not get it until it percolates elsewhere around the world. And that's a good compromise for things like shopping cart scenarios, as well as a bunch of social network scenarios that you can go ahead and take advantage of. And what's nice is you can, again, choose any consistency model you want in your database. You can also override the consistency level on a per request basis, depending on the exact scenario. And all these things are things that pretty much no other database on the planet does. And as you can see here, it's super easy to take advantage of. I can set up firewalls and now virtual networks, so I can enclose this database so it can only be used by my particular application. And then once I go live with it, the other nice thing that we have built in is this metrics view, which allows me to see real-time views of how much data access I'm seeing, and in particular, what's my SLA look like and my performance look like. And as I mentioned with Cosmos DB, we guarantee single-digit millisecond read and write time anywhere around the world, and you can monitor and manage all of this directly inside this metrics view. And you can take advantage of all this in a super easy way to stand up and really start to build amazing applications that you just couldn't build easily before and run it entirely as a managed service inside Azure. Cool. So that was a little bit in terms of about Cosmos DB. One other nice thing about Cosmos DB that we just announced last week is a bunch of new pricing options, including the ability to now buy what we call reserved capacity, which lowers your bill by about 65%. So if you've got a database that's going to be used a lot, this is a great option to take advantage of. We've also introduced a new entry-level option with Cosmos DB, and you'll see even more entry-level options come out towards the end of the year. And this basically means that you can start with a Cosmos DB database and do hundreds of operations per second against it for roughly the €15 range a month. And that's going to sort of open up the possibility for you to kind of use it, hopefully, in pretty much any project. And then if you want to, again, you can scale it up to be able to support hundreds of millions of operations per day in a completely elastic, seamless way. So that's a little bit in terms of some of the work we've done around what we call operational data services. So ones that you typically use as you're reading and writing within your application. The other thing that we've also now have inside Azure is a really rich set of what we call analytics services. And this gives you the ability to take data and reason over it often offline or after the fact and be able to kind of understand the data in a much deeper way. So for example, we now have Power BI, which does data visualization. We've got our data factory service, which allows you to copy data around. So if you have an on-prem SAP, or you've got data in a SaaS application, you can set up a job that says, hey, every hour, copy the changes into a data lake or into a data warehouse inside Azure. Our Databricks service gives you a Spark as a service, and it's about 7 times faster than pretty much any other Spark service out there, and allows you to use Spark to do data transformation and deeper analytics. And with our SQL Data Warehouse service, we now give you a really, really powerful way that you can do interactive querying using SQL against vast amounts of data. And with our Azure Machine Learning service, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, you can now also build custom AI algorithms against that data that can make your application even smarter. So lots of services you can take advantage of, and all these ones you can start using today. Another service, though, I thought I'd spend time on, since I know a lot of people here have used Azure before, is a brand new service we just released a couple days ago that we call the Azure Data Explorer. Anyone here using that yet? No, good. Or one person, but good, because this way I guarantee that everyone will see something new. And the Data Explorer is a service that we've used internally inside Microsoft for a couple of years now. And it's probably a service that I'd say of all the engineers at Microsoft, the thing they most love is this one here. And it basically, because it provides a way you can do simple queries that against vast amounts of data, literally in real time. And so at Microsoft, we collect about 20 petabytes of log telemetry per day across Azure, Office 365, and Dynamics 365, and Xbox. And all of it flows through this Data Explorer service. And any of our engineers can basically use this tool in real time to basically see how their services are performing, whether they're having any issues, and when they're trying to diagnose or debug something, they basically, the first thing they do is go to this Data Explorer in order to query it. And you can query over 1 billion records in less than a second, and I'm going to show that in just a moment. And what's nice is, again, you can scale from just a few gigabytes of data to literally petabytes. And it works, again, both against data at rest as well as a streaming option. So if you're using IoT or you're using an Event Hub scenario like you saw a little bit earlier, you can actually also look at the data as it's literally coming in real time into the system. So let's go ahead and show a quick demo of this in action and how you can use it. And so the scenario I'm going to do here, it's not that, it's this one right here. And it's basically a scenario where what we've done is I've taken a public data set, so this is just off the web, of GitHub public event data. And it's a couple, I think it's about 100 gigabytes in size, and it's got about 1 billion records in it. And we're just going to go ahead and query it. And what I've done is I've just provisioned a Azure Data Explorer cluster, and I've just pointed at a storage account that has that raw data in a comma separated format and loaded it into the cluster. And what I can do now is click the query button, which will bring up this query tool that I can now use to query against this public GitHub data. And again, this is just public data, so I want to make sure no one thinks this is coming directly off of anything private, and it's just off of garchive.org. And what I'm going to use to basically query this is this syntax that we call KQL, which is what the Azure Data Explorer uses. And it's sort of a SQL-like syntax, but it's particularly aimed at aggregation scenarios and analytics scenarios, so it also has some additional custom features that you can really take advantage of that are powerful. So let's go ahead and run this first query, and I can just sort of select it. It's going to basically look at GitHub events and basically sum up the total number of events here. And what you'll see when I go ahead and run this is there are 1,048,000,000 events in this log file that we just queried. And then the other thing you'll notice is it took me 1.3 seconds basically to query it, and that's If I do it again, it now takes 0.47 seconds, so you can see as it warms up, it's even faster, to basically sum up and aggregate across that. If I want to see how many events per day since in September, I could run this. Again, it's 0.52 seconds to go against this billion rows of data, and it's showing me now on a per day basis what each of the number of GitHub events were. And right now it's just showing it in a table format, and in addition to kind of writing interactive queries, we also have an API, so you can do this all programmatically inside your applications. We also, as part of the API, even support IntelliSense. So you'll notice here the language itself, we get a nice IntelliSense syntax. I can also, it has built-in visualization. So if I want to render this, for example, as a time chart, hit run, you can see here it just took those billion events and just transformed it in terms of the query language and showed it. Again, this is all in real time. That took less than half a second. If I want to see kind of what type of events are stored, you'll notice also, so I've got push events, this is created events, watch events, etc. 553 million of those. I can also go ahead and just drill into any of the data. And what's nice about the Data Explorer is I can basically store data in any format. There's no schema required. You can basically just shovel any raw data and it can basically query against it. And so in this case here, you'll notice this actor field is actually JSON-based pairings. And I can actually even query against the sub-rankings inside those pairings, again, without having to index anything or perform any kind of real-time index operation. And then where it gets really powerful is I can start to write queries that go sort of beyond what you typically would write of just sort of select star. So for example, if I want to find here the most popular 5 repos at Microsoft, I can do that. I can pull out from the watch events, the issue events. I can rank them however I want. I can join them together against other custom data sources if I want to. And I'm going to just say render it as a bar chart. And when I do that, again, about 2.3 seconds to do all of that summation against a billion rows of data. You know, here's what they look like. And if I want to even go into the syntax, or into do a text search, in this case here, around languages, I could again pull all this together, project it, and do a, in this case here, year-over-year compare across data sets. And this last one here is actually going to look at raw text, and it's actually pulling out key terms like Azure, Spectre, GDPR, blockchain, and showing me a visual representation on a day-by-day basis which events are using which of those key terms, and again, visualizing and summarizing it all here for me. All this is real time. And as you can see, it's lightning fast, works against any type of data, and because Data Explorer is a service, I can scale it up when I need to, I can scale it down, I can actually choose whether I want to optimize for storage or compute on any different dimension, and it really completely changes the way that you can work with data and can take advantage of it now in every Azure region around the world. So definitely recommend, if you've got lots of data, again, whether it's log files, whether it's IoT data, or whether it's just a bunch of text files, take a look at this service, and I think you'll be pretty impressed in terms of what you can do with it. So I've talked about kind of working with data. We've talked about building applications. Let's do a couple more demos here and look at artificial intelligence. How many people here are using machine learning today or AI? A couple hands. How many people here would like to do AI or machine learning? Okay, yeah, and yeah, I think generally with AI, there's sort of two types of people in the world. There are the people that know how to do machine learning, and then there's the people like me who don't. And we try to make sure with Azure that we've got a great set of services for both. And so one of the things that we support, for example, for people that don't have a lot of deep background yet in AI and machine learning, is something we call our Azure Cognitive Services. And these are pre-built AI models that you can leverage inside your application. And they can be called just with APIs. So you don't need to understand underlying machine learning. You don't need to understand underlying AI to start taking advantage of them and be able to use them. And so we've got vision APIs, we've got speech APIs, we've got text understanding APIs, and a whole bunch more. And what's nice is there's built-in .NET APIs, Python, Node, Java, and other SDKs. And so you can use them in your language of choice. to start adding and introducing kind of richness inside your applications. So let's look at a simple demo of this in action. And so we've got a lot of samples online. One of them here that I'm just going to run that you can also run locally is kind of what we call a real-time crowd insight service. And what this does is basically runs locally using the camera on my system, but it's calling into the cloud. So this is connecting up to Azure. And it's basically taking advantage of our built-in face recognition API. So I'm just uploading the picture, and it's basically building a sort of rectangle around my face. And you'll notice if it zooms in, it actually shows how old I look. I'm jet lagged. So I'm a little older right now in the picture than I am. It also will show you kind of, am I neutral or happy? Now I'm happy or sad. This one's hard, but anyway. And then the cool thing is, watch this. Woo. It works, and you can see now lots of me, and it tracks it, which is always discovered kind of a fun thing. And again, this is as simple as just calling an API, where here's a picture, give me back an array of rectangles for all the faces, and then bring back the demographic information about those faces. If I want to, I could even do sort of simple training without, again, having to build my own facial detection API. Instead, you can actually just train it using existing data sources you have. So I'm going to go ahead and search Scott Guthrie. This is doing kind of a Bing search. So that's me. I wish that was me. No, sadly not. And he looks like he's in jail. These are just pictures over the years. Ooh, that looks bad. That would be the funky me, the hipster me. But anyway, these are just searches off the web. None of these are recent. So I think the oldest, or the most recent picture is probably about 4 years old in this set. You can tell I had more hair then. And so this is basically just bringing down a couple pictures off the web. I'm just going to do a simple train. So it's going to basically just tell Azure, train the model so that this is what Scott Guthrie is. And then the thing you'll notice when I go back to the demo now is it now is not only identifying the person in it, but you'll see it also says it's me with about 76% confidence, even though those pictures are years old and I'm jet lagged and it's not great lighting. But it can give you a sort of simple sense of what you can do with these APIs and how you can start to embed them inside all your applications and take advantage of them in a really easy way. Again, even if you're not a data scientist. We also then have a bunch of services where if you are a data scientist, that you can go ahead and build and train your own AI models with them. For example, our Spark service you can use to prepare data. Our Azure Machine Learning service allows you to train models across one or hundreds of thousands of servers running inside Azure. And then our deployment capability allows you to package up any custom model that you build and deploy it, for example, in a Kubernetes cluster or on the edge using our Azure IoT services or any other environment that you want to basically run and deploy this using a Docker-based approach. So really, really flexible way you can build your own custom APIs as well. We also then, for people that are somewhere in between where you just want to have a pre-built model and you want to build a custom one, just released a bunch of services at Ignite last week, including our auto ML capability and a new library called ML.net that you can take advantage of where you don't have to, again, be a data scientist. You can, with ML.net, it just works with .NET, so you can just load it like a standard .NET library, point at data, and it can do a bunch of built-in AI algorithms for you in a very easy way. And with AutoML, you can just point at data, and it will infer what is the best machine learning or AI algorithm to use to get unique insights against it. Again, all these are now built into Azure that you can take advantage of and use. So, you're at an event, there's gonna be lots of really great content throughout this event where you're gonna be able to learn more about a whole bunch of new technologies. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it really is a great time to be a developer. The other thing that we're doing besides going to going to events like this that you can use to learn is to take advantage also of a new service we just launched called the Microsoft Learn service. And this is basically a free online service. It works with Azure today as well as Dynamics 365. You'll see us take it to all the technologies across Microsoft over the next couple months. And it provides sort of a way that you can do interactive step-by-step tutorials. There's online videos, as well as exams that you can take at the end to actually test your knowledge, and provide a really easy way you can learn and try out Azure, again, completely for free. You can also earn badges as you do it, and so you can have kind of healthy competition across your teams and with your friends in terms of who knows more and who's learned more along the way. And so for example here, I'll show you a simple example. If you go to Microsoft.com Learn Today, you can see a bunch of online courses that you can do. And so if I want to say I want to start, say, learning Azure, you can take this sort of introductory course and learn what is Azure and do kind of minute by minute. So it's a fairly easy way you can start earning badges. For each of these courses you take, in this case here I've earned 100 experience points. They can add up to your overall level and again earn a badge. And then what's cool is, say for example, I want to learn how to deploy an Azure virtual machine. We not only have content that you can read, as well as videos that you can watch, but we also have the ability for you to literally copy and paste snippets into the interactive Azure Cloud Shell, which is integrated as part of the docs. And what this is giving you is basically a free slice of Azure that you can use for training. And so I can actually, in this interactive Cloud Shell, use the Azure command line tools. This is actually running Linux, so I can actually use standard bash commands inside the Cloud Tool. I can even go ahead, if I want to, load VS Code directly into the Cloud Shell on the right-hand side. And what's cool is you can create VMs for free without having to have a credit card, without having to sign up for Azure, completely now as part of the documentation. And so when you follow along with this particular tutorial, you'll learn how to create and configure a Windows VM using the command tool. And at the very end, when you click this Check Your Work button, it'll actually compare what you did in Azure in that free session we gave you with what the tutorial asks you to do. And it'll actually correct you if you've made a mistake or you've configured something wrong. So a really easy way, again, that you can actually learn and try out everything completely for free, no obligation, no credit card required, and become kind of more expert in all this technology. And we're going to be updating Microsoft Learn with new sessions pretty much every month that you can take advantage of. And we think it's hopefully going to be a great way that you can actually continue learning kind of on an ongoing basis. So hopefully you saw here this morning, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do with the cloud. There's a bunch of stuff that we're doing with Azure. And I've really just scratched the surface in terms of all the different technology and capabilities that you can leverage. And super excited to see what you do with Azure and with the cloud. And can't wait to see what hopefully great applications you build. And so I want to thank everyone for coming to Techorama and for the Techorama folks inviting me to do the keynote. It's a great conference. I know you're going to have a great week ahead, and I really look forward to what you learn. So thanks so much, and have a great event.